Hey folks, this is Rhykker, and we just got the full reveal of Path of Exile's upcoming massive update called the Third Edict. This update launches August 29th at 1 p.m. Pacific, and these guys have been cooking. Now, right off the bat, we're gonna rip off the band-aid, okay? No new class, no Druid, no Shadow, none of that, but everything else they're doing, everything else has been a big W. So first off, we are getting indeed Act 4. Not only that though, Cruel difficulty is just gone altogether. You will not have to repeat any part of the campaign because after Act 4, to get you the rest of the way to Endgame, they are adding 3 new temporary interlude acts. Yeah, in order to just satiate us, they've created temporary content just as a placeholder, new content, new story content, new bosses, new regions. It'll be revisiting some old zones, but it is entirely new acts to complete to get us all the way to Endgame. In Act 4 specifically, we are chasing after this mythic weapon, the Third Edict, and what's really neat about Act 4 is that you can play it kind of in any order that you want. It is non-linear. It consists of 8 islands, and you can go to these islands in whatever order you desire. Throughout Act 4, there's over 100 new monsters. There are 16 new areas and 12 new bosses. As for the interlude acts, each one includes 6 to 7 areas and 4 to 5 bosses each. This is a massive amount of new content coming with this patch. As someone who used to dread having to replay the campaign on Cruel difficulty, I am so glad that they did this temporary solution. Now, another massive new feature they're adding is sprinting. If you hold down the dodge roll button, after you complete the dodge roll, your character will then go into a sprint, i.e. like faster movement. There is no stamina bar, there is no limit to how long you can sprint, but the purpose of sprint is just meant to be to traverse maps faster. So what that means is if you get hit while you are sprinting, you'll be punished by being knocked down. Still though, this is really helpful for, again, 1, traversing those big maps when it takes time, especially if there's any backtracking involved, but 2, also, if you're getting overwhelmed by monsters, and, you know, monsters can be pretty fast, well, now you have a better way to run away from them. They're making big changes to support gems. First off, we always had that limitation where you can only have 1 support gem equipped to 1 skill. No more limitation, you can have the same support gem equipped to multiple skills now. As many copies of that support gem as you like. Also, there previously were only 3 tiers of support gems. They are adding more tiers. You'll be able to find as well different tiers of the same support gem as you level up. And you may not always want to just go for the highest tier version because as they go higher in tier, their functionality may change a bit, especially when it gets to the final version. They're also adding lineage support gems, which are Giga Endgame versions of support gems. And these you can only get as drops. Some will be rarer than others, some will only drop from certain bosses, some are completely build defining, some are simply power upgrades, and some are going to be rarer to find than others. There are 40 lineage support gems being added. Now let's talk about the classes. Again, no new class, but every class is getting reworked, improved, buffed in some way. The Ranger, for instance, is getting more cold tools, so more support for cold builds. Also, evasion, the dev said was the weakest of the defenses. Evasion in general, or evasion builds, are getting a buff with the introduction of a new mechanic called deflect. So evasion could only avoid certain kinds of damage, deflect can avoid any kind of damage, and if you get a successful deflect, you take 40% less damage. There's also no limit to your deflect chance, so you can reach 100% deflect chance. The deflect roll happens in addition to the evasion roll, so you're stacking these two, basically, and you can get a lot of deflect in the passive tree, probably close to where you would also be getting evasion, again, to really support those evasion builds. So altogether, this should be a nice defensive boost to dexterity-based classes. Now, similarly, they made some changes to block, as well to better support parrying. Everything in the game, asterisk, is now blockable with the exception of some very specific boss mechanics. We're seeing more support for fire builds for warrior, shield charge, no more cooldown on that. Now that we have sprint as a mechanic, which we cannot overestimate how game-changing having sprint is to the feel and pace of the game. But now that there is sprint, we no longer need that delay on shield charge, so you can just keep shield charging as your movement. In general, more love given to warrior shield builds. The Warbringer Ascendancy gets lots of buffs. Also, accuracy. Warriors were never intended to need to rely on gaining accuracy, so they've basically made it that a warrior can hit anything in close range to it without needing to stack any accuracy. Now, the devs have also been wanting to buff armor, which that one I feel more people have been saying is the weakest of the defenses, and specifically that it only affects physical damage. So what they're doing to address the weakness of armor is to have the affix that allows armor to additionally block elemental damage, have that be much more prevalent. General love to mercenaries given. Crossbows, reloading them now no longer gives a movement penalty, so just in general, lots of improvements made to the run and gun feel playstyle. Across the board, all skills that you can use while moving, you know how they slow you down? That slowdown won't last as long after you stop using the skill. Tons of buffs to crossbow skills. There's a new crossbow skill as well. The Mercenary's banner has been buffed. Now, talking about accuracy before, changes to the Witch. Minions no longer need accuracy, so attack minions, they just hit. Also, you can now use Unearth on the corpses of your own minions. Very helpful in those boss fights. Raise Spectre's getting a big buff. In general, we're getting new spellcaster weapons with new occult skills. They're buffing the ascendancies as well. The Blood Mage, the initial node of that ascendancy, Sanguimancy, is now just free. You get it automatically. As for the Infernalist, Demon Form previously would basically drop your weapon. You wouldn't benefit from your weapon. They removed that. You now benefit from your weapon. For the Monk, they made a Bruce Lee hand-to-hand unarmed build possible. If you build towards it, you can benefit from staff skills while having no weapon equipped. As for its ascendancies, the Acolyte of Chuyula was seen as like one of the least popular in the game. Lots of love coming to that. Big damage buffs in particular. For the Sorcerer, they're giving more support to multi-element builds. A lot of the Sorcerer's skills kind of specialize you into doing one kind of elemental damage. So for instance, you had like the curses that would make, you know, your enemies take more fire damage, for instance. They're just generalizing that. So now the curse is just going to be more elemental damage, period. They're also introducing the concept of infusions, where basically attacking with certain elemental skills are going to attack with that enough, and you're going to leave infusion of that element on the ground, and then if you attack with another skill through it, it's going to get like imbued with that infusion. So that can be either, you know, fire on fire, or it could be fire on lightning. Also, in the passive tree, you'll be able to do cool stuff now, like transform all your fire damage into chaos damage. They've also removed the delay on weapon swap. It is now instant, so this is going to allow you to much more readily have these hybrid builds that use more than one tool in your toolkit. Overall, the passive tree is getting about 100 new notable nodes, roughly 20 per class. So that's going to be a much denser passive tree, more interesting nodes than before. And attribute requirements on gear, they are lowering by 25% across the board, which means we are spending less of our passive nodes getting more strength and intelligence, and more of them on cool, fun things. Okay, now let's talk about the League mechanic. If you're coming from Diablo, this is like a season mechanic. The League mechanic is the rise of the Abyssal. As you're going around the world, in maps, you are going to encounter fissures that are tied to pits. As you kill monsters around these fissures, the fissures will close. Once the fissures are closed, then a horde of abyssal monsters will rise from the pit. If you manage to kill all the monsters coming out of the pit, then you're going to get abyssal troves, treasure chests with lots of loot. Now, the cool thing about these fissures and these pits is that the monsters that you kill during the original fissure phase will affect what comes out of the pit. So kill magic monsters, magic abyssal monsters will emerge. Kill rare monsters, and then rare abyssal monsters will emerge, and it could pull as well like the kind of affixes from the monsters as well. Even have abyssal versions of the modifiers, more challenging. And these also interact with other game mechanics. So for instance, if the monster that you kill is a rogue exile, then he's going to come back as what's called a Lichborn, which is going to be some kind of boss with multiple abyssal modifiers on it. If you happen to kill a boss near a fissure, then you're going to get this giant larva come out. If there were monsters imprisoned in essences near the fissures and you interact with that, then you have a chance to get special abyssal essences as a drop. So that's the core loop. It's going to be close the fissures, defeat what comes out of the pit, get the rewards. Maps could have multiple pits, and the deeper you go into the game, the more likely you are to run into more and more pits in one map area. Now, complete enough abysses, and eventually you're going to find a special drop. Ancient pieces of bone. You can use these to imbue a rare item with a special hidden modifier. You'll need to reveal this modifier, and to do that, you're going to go to a new area in Act 2, where you'll interact with basically a new crafting system. So put it in the crafting interface, and then you'll have a choice of one of 3 mods to permanently add to that item. Now, some of these mods might be normal mods, some of them might be special new Abyssal mods. Generally in the campaign, we'll be using this as a way of just kind of powering up as we're going along, filling in things that we're missing with our build. But for Endgame, there's going to be some new really powerful mods. And you can also do this crafting on waystones, for instance, talking about Endgame. And some of the modifiers that you can get will be modifying the pits that you're going to get in maps. And there's a ton of different map modifiers you can get. Now, sometimes when you close a pit, you'll actually unveil a hidden passage down into another location. It's going to be loaded with abyssal enemies with a special abyssal rare to kill at the end. Great loot to drop. This will be a nice place to get some special support gems. There's also some new socketables you can find. Like there's one that's basically like a unique item of its own. And then once you're in the end game, you're going to find new places to delve underneath to fight bosses. There's going to be 4 abyss bosses. They drop specific new uniques. For instance, they got a belt that has sockets on it that'll randomly be from some other item type. You'll also find a new unique jewel that will transform part of your skill tree into an abyssal version of the passive skill tree. You can also find a Finger of the Lich, which you're going to use, take that to that same abyssal crafting interface, and instead of crafting on an item, you're going to imbue it upon yourself to do something. They didn't want to spoil it. Presumably it's going to be some kind of permanent buff to your character. Now, speaking of endgame, there will be 25 new endgame maps. All the new campaign bosses, all the new campaign areas will be brought into maps. They're adding a couple new mechanics to the Atlas. They want to really help bridge the gap between you entering, mapping, and getting to the pinnacle content. Each of these new mechanics has an exclusive new drop pool of lineage support gems. And no, they are not doing anything with towers this update. But talking about the maps themselves, the waystones, the affix system is going back to the way they were done in PoE1, as opposed to prefix, suffix, good, bad. Just every affix, whether it's a prefix or a suffix, is going to be good and bad. In other words, it's going to juice, challenge, and reward. They're making a change to the way we can allocate our points into the Atlas passive trees. Your first 2 points are basically going to be free now. You don't have to engage with the pinnacle content. You'll unlock it somehow, but it's going to be much earlier on into your endgame voyage. Also, in general, pinnacle bosses now, they'll be paid for in splinters, with easier versions just costing fewer splinters. They're also smoothing out the leveling curve. It'll now be easier to reach the mid-90s. They're making some upgrades to crafting. For instance, with essences, they're going to operate more like regals now. And they're going to add specific modifiers with specific values, as opposed to randomly one of these things. We're also getting many more tiers to essences to encourage us to use them as we get them rather than hoard them, so we don't have all of these, early game essences that we're keeping for endgame. Because by endgame, we should have better versions, and we should want to use better versions on higher level gear. Also, the highest tier of essences, now called perfect essences, will function like chaos orbs, replacing an affix. Overall, there's going to be many different essences and many different tiers covering campaign to endgame. They're also making a lot of changes to late endgame crafting to make it a lot easier to craft yourself up really strong items. You'll be able to find greater and perfect orbs of transmutation, as well as regals and chaos. These will ensure minimum affix tiers. They're also adding powerful new crafting bases, exceptional items. These can roll with an extra socket or tons of quality. And there can also be exceptional unique items. They're adding new omens as crafting options. You'll be able to turn an item into a sanctified item, which is an item that once it's sanctified, you can no longer craft on it. Overall, they're just giving a lot of love to PoE2's crafting system, which it desperately needed. Now we're ending with one of, I'm calling it one of the most exciting changes or one of the most hype changes. They're all super hype changes, but something that is probably going to change the way I play the game. Asynchronous trade. They're finally doing it. It's finally happening. We're basically getting an auction house that's not an auction house, but asynchronous trade, meaning you want to list an item. You put it for sale, you give it a price, then you can log off the game, go to bed. Someone else could be searching through the trade website, find your item, go into game, go to your hideout, interact with your NPC, buy that item, and then when you log in the next day, you just go to that NPC and you claim the sale price. So rather than putting the item in a premium stash tab as we used to, there's going to be a new NPC called Ange, which you can invite to your hideout. You will give the item to her. When you give the item to her, you have to select a price, which is going to be one of the game currencies. At that point, it's going to be listed on the trade website, and if someone goes to purchase that item from Ange, it's also going to cost a gold cost. So it's the currency plus Ange takes a gold tax. This is there to prevent shenanigans. Now, even if you're just playing the game, you're going to get a notification, boom, oh, you just made a sale. You can go return to Ange to collect your currency. And the devs will be allowing us up until the release of this update to convert any of our existing premium stash tabs into merchant tabs if we want to. We don't have to, but if we want more merchant tabs, you can make that conversion. So this means I will actually engage with the trade system now. I did it in PoE1 like 8 years ago. I don't want to do that again. This though, while I still would prefer a game in which I don't have to trade, or I don't feel immensely penalized for not trading, this ought to be a much smoother trade experience. Now, lastly, folks, if you have not yet purchased PoE2, they're doing a free weekend with the release of the update. The 29th until September 1st, you can play the game totally for free. Now, for full details, a deeper dive, and patch notes, check the description, folks. But again, I understand people were really wanting a Druid. The classes will come. I think the amount of content and changes that we have here is enough to log in next Friday. But what do you folks think? What are you most hype about in PoE2? Sound off in the comments, because that's the wrap of this video. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and share it, and subscribe to join Rhykkers Raiders for more ARPG content.